Welcome to another episode of Live from the Blue Seats. I'm your host, Rob, joined this week by Dave and producer JL. Although he was your host for the entirety of the offseason. I missed the song. I missed you guys. Definitely missed hockey a little bit. But given the way the season ended, a break was needed. But good to be back as we look forward to another season of Rangers hockey. Guys, how are we doing? And first of all, tell me, since I've been off the internets for a while, what did I miss?
Well, you apparently missed Diddy's lawyer saying that the 1,000 bottles of baby oil he had in his mansion was bought at Costco, and Costco CEO saying, "What the hell are you talking about? We don't sell baby oil." So you missed that.
Okay. That didn't realize I didn't think of all places to start. That's where we would start. But thank you.
Oh, welcome back, Rob. Goodness.
Yeah.
Wow.
JL, how was your summer?
My summer was good. The Mets didn't suck. That was really honest. that is what honestly helped really transitioning from the Rangers into the summer, is that the Mets didn't suck. But other than that, it was it was definitely a little lonely around here. I'll say that. It was definitely interesting to record some episodes of this podcast just by myself. But it was a good, fun summer. Not really much going on in Rangerland, but just it's just probably one of the easiest summers in terms of just sort of, I don't know. It was a good summer. I can't complain. I went to Virginia, and I got shot down by multiple women. It was great.
That needs a podcast of its own, I think.
I think it does.
Yeah. Like I said, it's good to be back. And I think, look, we're going to ease into it. We don't even really have, I would not call this even a season preview episode. It's more like the, the informal skate part of training camp where like the players get together for like the 5 or 6 days before camp actually starts. That's kind of what I would consider this for us. We'll have a proper season preview. We'll hear from other, folks on the blog. Maybe we'll get some other, special guests as well throughout the season, all the usual stuff. And, kind of see where that road takes us. But I guess I just want to start here, guys. Dave, I'll start with you. How would you grade the Ranger offseason? Like what letter grade would you give it? And how do you feel about the team coming out of this offseason?
Sorry, there's going to be a special guest appearance by my 1-year-old screaming her head off in the next room. But we're letting her cry it out. We're letting her cry it out for the people who are going to be, armchair parenting. All right, I don't need to hear it. Fuck off. How would I grade the off season? So I'm going to say a solid B. And people are going to say, "What the hell are you talking about? They are just running it back." And yeah, for the most part, they are. Trouba, that whole drama, I can't blame Trouba for exercising his contractual rights to not be traded right now. I'm pretty sure that if his wife's residency didn't get delayed a year, he would have been traded, but dude's doing it for his family. I have no issue with that. A little bit of a dumb move by Drury to play nice and be like, "Hey, we're looking to trade you. Where do you want to go?" And he basically said no. But whatever. I think Trouba in a third pairing role will be fine. Riley Smith is fine. He, on paper, should be a better fit than the 17 other right wingers they've already tried with Kreider and Zibanejad since they traded Buchnevich. Ruedel was fine. That's really it. I mean, they're running it back, but they're also better. if that makes sense. Zach Jones adds a much needed element on the blue line that they don't have outside of Adam Fox, which is a strong puck mover. Riley Smith is definitely better than Capo Caco in the middle six right wing role and a scoring right wing role. Holy crap. So they're better. They don't jump off the page at you, but they're just overall solid. And with a little luck, I think they'll be fine.
Yeah, JL, what about yourself? What's your vibe going into this season based on the off season specifically? Let's not get into any training camp or preseason stuff yet.
So going into just some of the things that they were doing. So obviously, them first of all, them getting rid of Barclay Goodrow was, trickery at its finest. So that was definitely a good start.
I forgot about that. This is what happens when your 1-year-old screams and doesn't go to sleep for an hour and a half.
I did find it funny, just on a quick side note, of Barclay Goodrow sounding absolutely depressed when they interviewed him and did not want to talk about the Rangers when
He was not happy at all. Yeah.
he was. And you know what? Hey, listen, look, you're getting paid $3 million to play in Northern California. You won 2 Stanley Cups. I understand being upset about being traded from New York, but listen, whatever. He did his thing here. He was, he earned most of his contract with his playoff runs. But starting off good with Goodrow. Yeah, Dave is right about Drury kind of like telegraphing the fact that he wanted to trade him, which kind of shows to me that Drury was trying to be very proactive. Sam Carrick, okay, decent replacement. He's actually playing tonight. Uh, you know, then excuse me, Chad Ruedel, okay, I was, hope to see more of him. They didn't really use him much in the playoffs. But just overall, though, I thought it was a, decent offseason. Riley Smith, like Dave said, should really complement Zibanejad and Kreider a lot more. The thing that I think a lot of people tend to forget is that Riley Smith is really good 5-on-5, at least just from what the numbers say. And if there's one thing that line needed, they needed jolt on 5-on-5. Now, whether or not that translate over into the regular season or not, it'll remain to be seen. But the defense is quicker. Jones is a lot faster than Eric Gustafson, who became incredibly suspect in his own zone towards the end. And now it seems like there's this heavy reliance on kids. So Berard's going to get a chance. Victor Mancini, who has been the talk of a lot of people before camp started, he'll get a look. Matthew Robertson, it's his final shot. Even on the forwards, Brett Berard, Brennan Othman, it just, I feel like there's more of an injection of youth, and I think that'll do them a lot better. And this is what good teams do. When they're tight, like Tampa Bay would be, then they would essentially sort of, add the youth and then supplement it from there. So I think, finally letting the kids play, and basically focusing on the rest of the core that they have. They're good enough to do it. So, like you said, just some luck, and we'll see what happens. But I think it was an okay offseason, like a B-. A lot of people won't agree, but could be.
Yeah. Sorry, guys. I think I might have lost you for a second there. I definitely was underwhelmed, and it's taking a lot of it's going to take a lot for me to sort of get the energy level and the excitement and the positivity, frankly, that I had about the team last year back. I just don't. I just feel like these things tend to go in cycles, and this feels like the end of the cycle. And I think the reason that Drury tried to trade Trouba was because he knew that big, somewhat major changes needed to be made. Now, obviously, look, there's guys on big contracts. There's a goalie to sign. There are, ascendant young players, right? I'm not talking about, taking the top 21 guys on this roster and changing out 13 of them. But there was definitely a need to shake this up. And the thing that I keep coming back to is regardless of the roster moves, of which I wish there were more, I'm more disappointed by the fact that like it pretty much looks like opening night. And now this can change, and I'm sure we'll talk plenty about it throughout the season. But like opening night, and probably for the foreseeable future, because Laviolette is a patient coach, and we like that about him. So I don't want to like do an about face on that either. But like it's basically going to be the same lineup with those replacements that you both just talked about, right? So Smith in for essentially Jack Roslovic, Sam Carrick in for Barkley Goodrow. Ryan Lindgren might miss a few games early because of his injury. But we're looking at basically the same forward lines and D pairs. And now what do we know about that team? We know that that team is a very good team, but it's a flawed team. It is a team that does not move the puck well from the back end, which is what sunk them in the Florida series. And really because of that, isn't good enough 5-on-5. Like they're okay 5-on-5. They're not a disaster. It's not like back to the AV years or the early Quinn years or like the second year under Gallant. Like they are, but they are not good 5-on-5. They're not elite. And let me rephrase that. They don't like approach very good to elite 5-on-5, which is like, unfortunately, what you need to be a serious contender. I mean, look at the teams that make the finals and win. They're almost always like a top 5 team in terms of like shot attempts, expected goals, all that stuff that we always talk about. And the Rangers got their teeth kicked in by a much better 5-on-5 team in the conference finals last year, just like they did 2 years ago, just like they did, 3 years ago now, and just like they did against the Devils when the Devils were an offensive wagon 5-on-5, and they blew the Rangers' doors off in the first round. So I have a hard time seeing how, all right, we're going to go through 82 games. The team is definitely good enough to make the playoffs. They have the goaltending. The special teams is going to be good. They're going to do well enough 5-on-5 against the middle and bottom of the league. And they're going to win plenty of games. They're going to win at least 47, 48, 49 games, which is what you need to make the playoffs. But after that, are we hoping for good matchups? Like, are we hoping for, basically like, to play the Caps again in the first round? And are we hoping that like the worst of the worst 5-on-5 team left in the Atlantic makes it to the like, and just the sheer like chances of getting back that deep in the playoffs are very difficult. I know Florida did it 2 years in a row. I know there has been some precedent for teams like incrementally making those steps year over year, but like it's really really hard to do. And it was hard for me to get to the end of last year and not feel like the Rangers like truly blew their best chance at a Stanley Cup with this core. So for that reason, like I said, it's going to be hard for me. It's not like I'm not going to watch the games for sure or anything like that, but it's going to be hard for me. I mean, I was so excited every game last year. I was super jacked from the jump. I really liked the team. I loved Laviolette, and there's a lot still to like, but I definitely have reservations specifically about 5-on-5 play. So, Dave, I'll go back to you. Like, knowing that this team is, let's call them average 5-on-5, right? They project to be kind of somewhere between 22nd and 17th in the league 5-on-5. How do you get into the top 10? Like, what is the path? And I'm talking anything. You may say they can't. They have to make trades, or you might say, well, they have to totally change the lineup, or it's a combination. Like, but that's what I'm focusing on this year. And one of the things that I'm slightly disappointed in so far is that they haven't really talked about it. Like, I was hoping they would come into this season and like talk about it in their press conferences, right? Talk about needing to be better 5-on-5, talking about needing to move the puck better, talking about needing to be a more assertive team in the offensive zone. And we haven't really heard much of that. It's just been like, yeah, same thing as last year. Here we go. So anyway, I've talked enough, Dave. Like, how do they get better 5-on-5?
Well, this is perfect timing because I had to step away a bunch of times because my 3-year-old won't stay in bed. Now my 1-year-old screaming her head off and can't leave my wife to do all that. So perfect timing. Anyway, how do they get better 5-on-5? So there are 2 things that we can't account for yet in this. It's Philip Hedl, who will be back hopefully for the whole year, assuming everybody in the preseason stops taking shots at him, which is really annoying.
Yep.
And the second is Zach Jones over Eric Gustafson, which we won't necessarily see right away because of Lindgren's injury, but we really have to see how those 2 fit in because Heedle's absence last year, I don't think people understand how big that was. And yes, we can say anything about the lineup. We understand the lineup impact, but what Hedl does is and Suits covered this a bunch of times, is on the breakouts, he is so good at circling back around the tops of the circles, plural, and giving the defense an outlet. Zibanejad isn't good at it. Trocheck's good at it. And whatever the Rangers threw out there on the fourth line were terrible at it. So with with Hedel back, the Rangers get an extra line that can actually get out of the zone and help the defense. From a system standpoint, that's important. And not many people are talking about that. We're talking about, Nick Medino, Barclay Goodrow at center, Alex Wenberg, who couldn't score a goal to save his life. Hedel at center moves the needle a lot, and that rhymes. I didn't mean for it to.
No, that's good, though. That's a good rhyme. I like the rhyme.
That completely threw me off because I didn't expect it. And then Jones over Gustafsson. Gustafsson was fine for what he was. Jones is a far better puck mover, and as JL said, faster, a better skater. He's going to have defensive issues, and I worry about what that pair defensively is going to look like if it's going to be Jones Trouba, which that's what it looks like it's going to be. That's going to be a rough pair to watch in their own zone. I don't know if I have an answer for you, Rob. That's a lot of words to say. I don't know because we have Hedel and Jones, and those are two big differences.
Yeah, certainly. And I think the Hedel thing can't be underrated, right? And it is. I mean, look, there were an awful lot of games of like 3C Nick Bonino last year, early in the year, and obviously Barclay Goodrow is not a center. He did what he had to do. He played the position fine, but Sam Carrick is a much better fit. And I think his 5-on-5 metrics do, bear that out. Again, their defense isn't an issue from a defensive standpoint, right? I mean, we've talked about this. They don't give up a ton of quality, especially under Laviolette. They've done a really good job of, protecting the front of the net. I mean, the Carolina series was truly a masterclass. It got a little bit away from them in games 4 and 5, but I mean, Carolina, took a zillion shots and got nothing out of it. And it was just absolutely perfectly executed, 5-man defensive hockey by the Rangers. And then they let their skill take over and they got enough goals to get a 3-0 series lead. And I'm fine with that plan, but clearly that plan didn't work against Florida. They spent too much time in their own end, right? And Florida was not as wasteful with the puck as Carolina was. So that's the other thing is that, does Jones move the needle, right? Because again, the problem with the Rangers against Florida was they could not get the puck out of their own end. So, I guess, JL, what's your confidence level in this defense to take another step, right? Now that means Zach Jones, but that also means, what does Keandre Miller and Braden Schneider look like as a pair over a full season? Is Miller a guy that needs to take a leap here for them does that help the team take a next step? What are your thoughts on this defensive group, which looks very much the same other than Zach Jones?
So obviously we saw Keandre Miller's game shoot through the roof when he was paired with Braden Schneider. So you kind of expect a little bit more of the same in that regard. He's probably going to be a little bit more comfortable now, so that means he's probably going to push up more offensively, which is actually his bread and butter, but also he's not as compromised on defense as he was with Trouba. I think Zach Jones is a little bit better to handle in that spot when it comes to trying to make up for Trouba's shortcomings, I'd say. Just for the speed alone, not to say that Keandre isn't fast, but Jones is definitely more fleet of foot in that sense. I think he's more of a natural offensive defenseman, so he has sort of that that speed to it more than Miller does. Miller has the long strides and he has the better stick though. Just as a whole defensively, though, we're going to see more of the same. Even if Lindgren comes back on one foot, it's going to be more of the same. And I think also with the potential of possibly Adam Edstrom potentially making a bottom 6 fourth line role on this team, I think that'll also help a lot too in terms of just mobility. You already get good defensive play from Cooley, Hedel, like Dave said, and Kakko. Kakko doesn't score much, but the guy's a solid defensive forward. And then if you were to do, let's just say Sam Carrick, let's say you do Sam Carrick, Matt Rempe, and Adam Edstrom. I think that alone is a lot better than on some of the combinations they threw out last year in terms of the fourth line. And, just touching back on the center depth, 100% correct on what Dave said. And I think that also factors into the 5-on-5 because I think, and you might have mentioned this at some point during the chat, in our chat last season, is that when the Rangers started the year, they were actually doing really well 5-on-5. And then Fox and Heedle get hurt basically on the same day. And that's when you saw things kind of fall apart, which led to kind of their slight decline and at the end of December into early January. So I think with a full season of these guys operating on full cylinders, I think it'll be slightly better. But also, I think what they're trying to do, and what I alluded to before, is really trying to see what a lot of these guys have in terms of the youth again. So obviously Cooley's making a huge step again in another year. Obviously Heedle's going to be there as well. But I think also Edstrom and Rempe are, huge deals. Matt Rempe's making the team. No ifs, ands, or buts about it, especially what he brought to the team during the playoff run. The guys loved him. Wasn't exactly the most fleet of foot, but he put in the work in the offseason, and it seems as if he's a little bit more determined to hold down a regular spot. So I don't see why he shouldn't be considered an asset because he can skate. Just because he's a little bigger, he's not going to, he's not going to go out and be Connor McDavid, but he's definitely going to be someone more fleet of foot, especially with his size and speed. So in terms of defense, I think they'll probably be a little bit better. Just in terms of getting the puck out of their zone, just for the and also you have to factor in Chad Ruedel. We didn't get to see much of him, but when he did play with the Rangers last season, when Trouba was hurt and he should have stayed on the IR or the IL, because like Dave said, broken bones don't heal that fast. He was great. So I think they're probably a little bit, not too much because you need a couple more assets to kind of elevate that a little bit. But I think they're a little bit more mobile and probably not as tentative on moving the puck like Eric Gustafson was. So I think overall, just in terms of defense, I think they'll be slightly better. Do I think they'll win the President's Trophy this year? Probably not, but that's okay because it doesn't really matter. Just win and get in. That's it. But I think they'll be just better for the most part. But they're still going to be a good team, and I think the defense, maybe with a consistent Zach Jones, will probably take a bit more of a step up.
I want to make a counterpoint though regarding Rempe. Just for shits and giggles, I want him to be sent to Hartford for like 3 hours just to watch everybody melt down.
Yeah. I mean,
and I'm only saying that because, listen, I love Rempe. I'm only saying that because I'm annoyed because my 1-year-old, whose bedtime is 7 o'clock, it's 8:45, is still not fucking down. And holy shit. So if I am having a rough time and barely able to focus on this podcast, all of you have to suffer. So Rempe has to go down for a couple of hours so all of you can melt down with it. Okay? That's how it goes.
Jeez.
I'm sharing it.
Okay.
Rob, I know you feel my pain.
Oh my God, more than you can even imagine. It has been a rough go lately with getting the older child to sleep for us. A little bit better the last week or so. Look, one thing, and then we'll talk one more kind of like status quo lineup thing, and then we could get kind of early thoughts on preseason so far and what guys have stood out. You know what, guys, I came out of last season with one thing in my head, and it has not left my head, and that is that we've reached the end of the Kreider-Zibanejad era, and I am desperate for this team to break them up and find a way to turn Mika Zibanejad into, Philip Danault, essentially. Now, he'll probably score more than that, although Danault has scored a little bit more lately in his career. But there's just like every time Mika goes into a series against like a guy like Barkov or a guy like Crosby, I won't even say he underperforms. What happens is it's proven that he's not at that level. And I think Ranger fans have to come to terms with that. Like, he just is not that dude. And I think he kind of needs to remake his game on the fly. And like, look, athletes do this all the time. I think putting him in kind of like a primary 1C scoring role is not what he should be doing. And I think I am interested in a world where Philip Hedl gets that opportunity, is what I'm saying. And where Mika truly becomes like a matchup guy. And yeah, sure, maybe he plays a purely shutdown role because look, Barkov didn't score a lot. It's not like that line was is a disaster defensively. We know Mika's a good defensive player, but like he also does not drive play offensively at all. And like when you go into these series where your top six is going to play, what is it, 70% of the 5-on-5 minutes, you can't have half of those minutes be a complete zero offensively. Look, for all of the defensive deficiencies of the Trocheck line at times, at least they fucking scored. Like I cannot watch another playoff run or another stretch of big games where Mika Zibanejad's line doesn't score. And that is what killed this team last spring. That is what will kill them again if they don't do it this year. So all I'll say is this: I'm interested in a world where they rethink the lineup and they truly shuffle things. And look, I'm willing to give them some runway with Riley Smith, right? You both made the point. Riley Smith's a good 5-on-5 player. He still has some gas in the tank. Maybe he is the key that unlocks Kreider and Zibanejad offensively. But if it doesn't work, and if we're looking at more paltry 5-on-5 stats, 10, 12, 15 games into the season, I think you've got to throw lines 1 and line 3 completely in a blender, assuming the Trocheck line is status quo, and see if you can jolt those two players awake and start forcing Zibanejad into a role that maybe fits his skill set as he enters his 30s, because he's a very good defensive center. He is not capable, at least in the last few years, of driving offense against elite guys. So what do either of you think about that?
So I don't think it's necessarily a blender. I just think you flip the centers.
Yeah, maybe it's
That's
that.
it. You just flip Hedl and Zibanejad. Based off of what we're seeing now, Cooley, Zibanejad, Kako can be a premier shutdown line.
That would be the best shutdown line in hockey. Yeah, that's my
possibly,
point.
Yes.
And
then you got what? Kreider, Hedl, Smith. I don't know what that's going to look like, but Hedl can play with anybody. The question I have is if you put the Cooley, Zibanejad, Kako shutdown line together, what role does your fourth line have? That's the question. Because the fourth line right now is, again, an energy line, and I don't agree with that kind of deployment.
You'd rather the fourth line be a shutdown line, which means you want them to play more shifts, frankly.
You need 3 scoring lines to win. The Rangers had 1 last year.
Mm-hmm.
You need 3. And Shesterkin can only do so much. Sorry, I'm getting distracted again. Shesterkin can only do so much. The puck moving can only do so much. You need the finishing talent on 3 lines. So if Zibanejad Kreider doesn't work, Zibanejad can't be traded, what do you do? And I think at that point you package Lindgren with somebody, get Mancini up, who looks like he's ready, and package Lindgren for insert upgrade at forward here. And if you need to, sorry to say, you might need to trade somebody we don't want to trade. Who that is, I don't know. Zibanejad's contract is abysmal, and that's going to be a problem.
And that's not a tradable. That's not a tradable contract. And
they can't even buy the damn thing out.
Right. Yeah. And trading Kreider doesn't make sense either. So you're probably looking at Kako. Like, let's assume he's having a good year, and Kako's got 15 goals at the trade deadline and looks like a decent offensive player. He's probably the guy that goes, right? And you try and take a big swing at the deadline, basically the Jake Gensel swing that you didn't take last year. Now, look, that's another thing that I don't know how much it's been talked about or relitigated on Twitter, because I've not been on that lovely platform for whatever it's been, 3-4 months now. But the more I look at that in hindsight, the more I'm like, they should have just gone all the way in and gotten Gensel, because that might have tipped the scales for them in that Florida series.
So Gensel, that was Pittsburgh. They wanted Perreault or Altman?
They
I
wanted
would have given
both.
them either, and Kako. I would have given them whatever they wanted. In hindsight, this is in hindsight, it's easy to say, and I'm a little bit bitter over last year in case you can't tell.
I see that.
No,
And
no, go
go
ahead.
for it, Joe.
Go ahead.
Uh,
No,
all
go
right.
ahead.
The thing that I am still not upset about, but like on the fence and torn about, is they are kind of running it back. And I am still very adamant that this team won't win with both Lindgren and Truba on the roster.
Yeah.
And it's
Agreed.
slowly evolving to include Zibanejad.
Well, and that's a big one.
That's a big
one.
one. And it's only because of his role right now. If Laviolette shows that he will evolve, and he'll at least try flipping Hedel and Zibanejad, keeping power play 1 intact, mind you. So Zibanejad's still going to get his goals. Power play 1 has been one of the best power plays in hockey for the last, 4 years, roughly?
Just about.
Yeah.
Just about.
Yeah.
Yep.
So you leave that, you let them cook, and then you do some tweaking 5-on-5. And like the thing with the fourth line, you can figure out a role later on, but I don't know. They are still. Holy crap! I can't get a thought together because of this. My thought process is, if the Rangers are still good without Lindgren, and then they come back and Lindgren still looks like the way he did last year, move him, get an upgrade to figure out the Zibanejad issue, and go from there. Do what the Red Sox did with Nomar Garciaparra. Make the tough choice.
That's actually a good reference. I like that.
I referenced it on Twitter yesterday and in the Patreon post,
I
and
actually like that.
more than one person replied, "What the hell are you talking about?"
Oh man. Oh no.
Do people not know who Nomar Garciaparra is?
Well, that was 20 years ago.
That's crazy.
My gosh, that is true. Oh man.
Yeah, that makes me feel old.
Yeah, I know.
For those who don't know, Nomar Garciaparra was the face of the Boston Red Sox for what felt like ever. And in 2004, they had a new GM, Theo Epstein, who was very into analytics, and he knew the team that he had could hit, could pitch, they couldn't field worth a damn. So what they did was they traded the face of their franchise, who coincidentally could not agree on a long-term contract with the Red Sox at that time. Sound familiar?
Mm-hmm.
So they traded him for a specific need, and they landed Orlando Cabrera and Doug Mankiewicz, who were excellent fielders, coupled with one or two other minor moves, mostly Dave Roberts, and this still pains me to this day. And then what happens? They go and they win the World Series that year.
Same. No, but I mean, it's such a great analogy though, because, and this is like, even me, and I'm thinking back to, again, the Gensel move, in the sense that, like, I remember thinking, like, man, I really don't want to give up, insert player here, Perot, Offman, even Kako, and I would have traded Kako, I think, if that's all it would have taken. But you are reticent to give up on certain guys, and you don't, look, Mika Zibanejad is like, if you go into Madison Square Garden on opening night, there's going to be 4,000 Mika Zibanejad jerseys in the crowd. That, most fans still love him. I think there is a segment of the fan base that is starting to turn on him, and I think he's frankly like earning that. But he's still a widely respected, beloved player. But like, there are certain guys that, if it's just not working and it is what's holding you back, you've got to figure out a way to move on from it, mitigate it, right? Like, and these are like, and you see this all the time, right? Like, the championship teams make really difficult decisions, and that's why, like, look, Barkley Goodrow can cry all he wants. Like, Chris Drury did what had to be done, and honestly, maybe he could have been a little more cutthroat with Trouba. The problem with that was that Trouba wouldn't have reported, and then that really hampers your ability to do business with any other team. So, that is what it is.
Was there any truth to that? Was there any truth? Because honestly, I don't know if I buy that.
I don't know. I mean, that was the whole thing that they keep, basically said that, like, they didn't execute a trade because he told his agent to tell any team acquiring him he wouldn't report, that he was going to stay in New York with his family. So that
I don't know if I buy that.
I don't know. Regardless, look, I think that it's such a weird. I just feel like the vibe. We always do a vibe check on this podcast, right? Like the vibes are weird right now, at least for me. Like this is a good team. There's no doubt about that. This is a very good hockey team. They're going to win a ton of games. All for all the reasons we talked about. Star power. The power play's elite. They've got the best goalie in the league, or this, one of the two best goalies in the league. They have to get him signed. I'm sure they'll do that. But they have flaws, and it's almost like this feels like more than ever a season where you're like, I just want to fast forward to April because like all that matters is the playoffs, right? Like last year, I think the regular season had some intrigue and some excitement because of Laviolette. You had a bunch of like big moments throughout it with the Stadium Series game. And, it was just one of those kind of special fun seasons. This season feels like it has absolutely none of that, right? Where it's literally just going to be like, we are going to put our heads down, chug through this season, and see what happens in April. That's what it seems like to me. So not to say I'm not excited to watch hockey. I can't wait until it's back and we're in the swing of the season. But, like I said, guys, and this is just me, but it's kind of hard to envision kind of like super high levels of excitement and vibes this season, at least right now as we stand here in late September.
I mean, I don't know if I buy the vibes thing because they're looking good in preseason right now. I want to see what happens if Brennan Othman makes the team, which I don't think he will, even though he's playing very well right now. Well,
yeah, he's got a goal tonight. I know. Yeah.
Yeah, and new addition to the group, Hope at Mika Zibanejad is a big Hartford Whalers, Hartford Wolfpack followers. She goes to a ton of games there, and basically she said in the chat, when he is focusing on playing the puck and not the body, he looks much better, and it looks like that is what got to him today. Is he's focusing on the puck. So who knows? Maybe Othman on the right wing instead of Riley Smith moves Zibanejad line forward. Maybe Othman on the wing with Cooley and Hedel, with Kako jumping to the fourth line in a defensive shutdown role, moves things. But I do agree with you that if things don't look the same by Thanksgiving, which is my barometer, but that's my benchmark there, by Thanksgiving, if we're still seeing a crappy 5-on-5 team that's really surviving based off Igor and the power play, then yes, things need to change. And it's going to require something that people don't want to have happen. And I really hope everybody, all the keyboard warriors on Twitter, on Instagram, on whatever social platform you're on, are ready for that. Because the only way to make changes to this roster is to trade somebody that has value. Trouba doesn't have value. Zibanejad doesn't have... Well, Zibanejad can't be traded anyway. So Zibanejad, regardless, doesn't really have much value. So you're looking at what? Kako doesn't have much value. So guess what? That's Lindgren. Lindgren is the only guy that has value that they can upgrade the roster with and not take a big step back defensively.
So that's a good segue, and we'll close with this. Yeah, JL, I was going to say, you throw your let's hear your thoughts on that, but I also want your thoughts on kind of the team in preseason so far, and we'll wrap with preseason thoughts before we get out of here.
So just to kind of, as excited I am, and you guys know me, I'm the eternal optimist, for the most part, even in the quote unquote worst of times, I do, as much as positive as I am, I do get that very similar feeling where it's like, well, what exactly are we going to look forward to this year? Because we know this team is really good. I think the disappointing thing to me the most is really Mika Zibanejad. I'm not really, when it comes to Jacob Trouba, I'm not really, too disappointed about that because, he can be serviceable in the role that he can be put in, regardless of whatever you want to believe, whether, he said he wasn't going to report or whatever. Look, Drury tried to trade him. It didn't work out. At least I know he tried. That's the only solace I take from that. But Zibanejad is the one that disappoints me the most is because not even 3 years ago, this guy was – it's so weird. It's like he hit a point in his career where he turned this corner, or it seemed like he turned this corner, and for probably about 2.5 seasons, he was probably one of the better centers in the league. So, which is what sparked the extension that was given to him in the year that they couldn't trade for Eichel. And for, at the time, it was, considered a steal because he was really driving that play on the first line. I mean, you could watch any highlight reel from before 2023, and this man was on fire. I mean, he was skating it in, cycling it around, coming back in time, playing defense. Now, I don't know if this is a Laviolette thing or a Gallant thing, but with Gallant and David Quinn, he was a monster. I mean, he had his signature 5-goal game under David Quinn. He was putting up numbers with Gerard Gallant. And now all of a sudden, Pierre Laviolette comes in and the guy forgets how to play hockey. It's like he reverted back to the Zibanejad that we saw when we traded for him, where it was like you saw the talent there, but it would just became inconsistent. So I don't know exactly what happened. That's the thing that disappoints me the most, because it's there. Like, at least with Trouba, I know that my expectations are low. But with Zibanejad, I know that it's there. And just touching on Lindgren real quick, I definitely do agree with you guys on that idea that he needs to go. And look, I have a Lindgren jersey. I like Lindgren as a player when he's not falling apart. I think in the right circumstance, he could be a good depth guy, but he's not going to be the guy, like Dave said, having Trouba and Lindgren on the roster. He's not going to be the guy that's going to hold up Adam Fox anymore because he can't stay healthy. So he would obviously, like you guys said, be the one in a trade. Just to touch on the point that you, real quick, on trading for Gensel. The Penguins weren't going to trade with us in the first place. That was a King's ransom kind of thing, which is the unfortunate part because the deal that they got from Carolina was very underwhelming to me, at least. And I feel as if maybe just trading Othman and Kako and a couple of picks would have been equal to that. But they weren't going to trade with the Rangers. I feel like they see Carolina as less of a threat than the Rangers do, which to an extent I can understand. But if the option was to trade Kako and Othman in that deal to get a guy like Gensel, I would have done it. So there's that. So just to jump on the preseason, I guess, just to transition into that. So we keep mentioning his name. I think Victor Mancini is going to be here quicker than most people think. I think he's got it. He's got it. You could see it. Now, granted, it's preseason and they're playing against guys that are, kind of somewhat AHL tier, but you got some NHLers here and there. Mancini's going to be here within the next year or two if they decide to keep him.
Well, he's going to break camp with the Rangers with Lindgren's injury.
Oh, 100%.
So you think he makes the team out of camp, Dave?
Only because of Lindgren's injury. I really need to preface it with that, because if Lindgren were healthy, Mancini does not have to clear waivers. He goes down to Hartford. There's no point in having him as seventh defenseman. Ruedel will be the seventh defenseman and sit in the press box all year round. Mancini will get time in Hartford. And if there's another injury, or if he plays himself into the conversation, again, guess who's gone? It's Lindgren.
It's Lindgren. No, I definitely see that, and I honestly think he does, and he should. Also helps that he is a New York Mets fan, which is really nice.
Really?
But
really?
No, he is. There's a picture.
I'm going to throw my 1-year-old at you and make sure she keeps you up all night.
There's a picture online, and it's him with his dad at a Mets game. I'm not making that up. It's true.
So wait, time out. Yeah, and I believe it. Let me ask though, what do you make of? So we're recording this on Thursday night. What do you make of the Connor Mackey with Adam Fox thing, which they at least started the game with? I know Jones has gotten some burn with Fox as well. Like, because it does feel like that would be the classic Ranger thing to do, right? Like, plug in the veteran, AHL lifer left-handed shot to play with Fox for a week until Lindgren gets back. Now, that might also tell me that they're anticipating this being a longer injury too. But I just, I don't know. I feel like there might not be are they going to put Ruedel? Where are they going to put Chad Ruedel? If you're saying that Victor Mancini makes the team as the seventh defenseman, Dave, that means Chad Ruedel starts opening night?
No. I phrased that poorly. And then after I finish this, I got to go. I got to tend to my 1-year-old. This is getting ridiculous. He's only making the team right now because Lindgren is hurt. And he will play as kind of an extended tryout. But Ruedel will be the seventh defenseman once Lindgren is healthy. And when Lindgren is healthy, Mancini will get sent back down. There's no point in him being the seventh defenseman.
Right.
Yeah, that sounds about
right. I'm not sure if I put that thought process together because Like, all right.
All right,
That
Dave.
makes
We'll
sense.
let
I
you
gotta
go.
go.
JL and I will wrap up. Good to
All
talk
right.
to you. We'll do another. We'll pod next week, and
Mhm.
thanks to Dave. Yeah, JL. Just to wrap this up.
Yeah. So yeah,
Yeah.
just real quick because it really isn't much to say. Preseason just started, so but Victor Mancini, I think, will definitely be here in some form or another within the next year or so, maybe even earlier than that. I personally think he plays into a spot to the point where they can't let him go. That all depends on what exactly happens with Lindgren. I think Ruedel is going to play opening night, depending on Lindgren's injury. Adam Edstrom's looked really good. Brett Berard has shown some flashes. Brennan Othman looks a little bit better. I think one of them ends up making the team as a spare forward, even though Brodzinski and VC are still there, but they're expendable. But I think the Rangers see the vision. Other than that, goalies are fine. Zibanejad, of course, not doing anything. But again, it's preseason. But that's the thing. I'll just say this.
Yeah.
I'm not going to sit here and because we all saw what happened with Lafreniere last preseason. Everybody was calling for his head. Whoa,
Me too. Me too. No, seriously,
yeah.
I was one of those people, so I
And
will own that.
I had to refrain from that because I'm just not that kind of person. It's like with spring training in baseball, you see it too many times.
Yeah,
But
you do.
it was like, oh, he's not gonna. And this wasn't directed just that, not to you. It's just the general sentiment everybody had at the time was that Lafreniere was not gonna do well because he had 4 bad preseason games and then he lit the league on fire. Been playing with Trocheck and Panarin, so. I really have to see when the season starts to really say anything about like Zibanejad and all them. They just really, I mean, Kreider's done a little more. They look good on the power play as expected, but I just they're playing all right. They're not terrible. I mean, Connor Mackey's not good, and neither is Brandon Scanlon or Ben Harper. But we all know those guys aren't making it. But I think the guys we need to be good, look confident, and I think a couple of the young guys end up coming up. I really think Edstrom makes this team though. So.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think, and look, what you said about Rempe too. I mean, I think he certainly makes the team. Probably plays opening night, and you'll see him in more than half of the games.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, certainly, Victor Mancini seems to be the guy. He's probably going to win the Lars Eric Schuberg Award that they give to the sort of the training camp standout, guy who's not on the team, which is great. Yeah, I mean, look, the main storyline for me is let's get the Igor Shesterkin contract done. I mean, that will hang over heads a little bit here, and I know Lundqvist kind of had a similar situation in I think it was 2014 before he got his extension done. That got done in January. He handled it well. Igor's got a little bit of a different mental makeup. Benoit Allaire is not with the team day to day anymore. So there is something that bears watching there, as does, do we get the same Jonathan Quick again? And I don't know if it's reasonable to expect that. Now, can he give them like replacement level backup goaltending? That's fine. That's the hope. But like, he was very, very good in, 2/3 of his starts last year.
Oh,
maybe
100%.
more. Yeah, maybe 75 or 80% of his starts. I mean, he was like, and lights out early in the year. So, those are really the things I'm watching. Other than and Hoffman as well, and he really was until this Boston game kind of a disappointment. And again, it seems to be almost more of a focus thing with him, where he kind of gets too into the like, oh, I want to lean into being a pest, and a lot of young players do that because they think that that's how they're going to get noticed by the coaching staff. I think he just needs to play hockey. I think he just needs to go out there and put himself in position to score goals and let his talent take over. And then when the engagement side of the game happens, that'll come naturally. You don't need to force that. So, that's I'm interested in him. I haven't seen too much of Berard. I haven't been able to watch these games wire to wire, but he intrigues me as well. Seems like Adam Sikora has not really made a dent or made an impression. Those are kind of the 3 top forward prospects that we have an eye on. So. It should be interesting, and we'll certainly we'll be at it every week here on the pod. We'll do a proper season preview once the roster's a little closer to set, a little closer to opening night, which is October 9th. Very excited about that. And JL, any other final thoughts for you before we wrap up?
I know that there are a lot of people who are dour or down. myself included, I, as positive as I am, there's everything still up in the air. But, if hockey's back, let's enjoy it. It's the same mentality I have with baseball. It's, yeah, it was a very disappointing end. When the Rangers get eliminated or whenever something bad happens, I just kind of go numb. I don't really express anger unless there's reason for me to be angry. So I'm still kind of numb about it. Obviously, I'm disappointed, of course. It's not to say, I don't want my team to lose in the conference final at all. But
Yeah.
but I think though, just going forward to this year, there are a lot of things that us as fans can't control, and that I think affects a lot of the discourse that goes into a lot of this. And sports is meant to be fun, and we know the team is going to be good. Whether they'll win a Stanley Cup, who knows? Teams who have been way worse have won it. So I guess my
It's true.
saving grace, and I guess to people who are going to watch, and that's not to say that people's opinions are invalid. It's just that if there's always a bright side to things, and I think it's always somewhat important to look at that, because let's be real. We live in a market where our teams are not going anywhere. You see this with the Oakland A's. We're recording this on the day of their last game at the Coliseum. A lot of teams tend to move around. It's happened almost a bit. It hasn't happened lately in hockey, but there's always
Well,
rumors.
you got Utah. You got Utah.
Oh yeah, Utah. There you go. Perfect example. I completely missed that because I still think of them as Arizona, but you could be an Arizona Coyotes fan and not root for your team. That's not to say I'm not going to sit here and say, hey, don't point out the flaws of this team. No, that's not what I'm saying. I'm just saying that at the end of the day, the Rangers are back. They're going to be good. And just kind of enjoy it while it's here. And then when, the things come up, you discuss it appropriately, because there seems to be this weird, like, it's generally, and I saw a lot of it during the summer, just this kind of weird, like, anger discourse about things you can't really control, and then it kind of feeds into the whole, well, I was right about that. Well, congratulations. How better do you feel now knowing that you were the first one to be angry? It's like Frank the Tank on Mets Twitter. It's like he's always up in arms, but the minute the Mets do something positive, he's quiet. But so I guess let's enjoy the season. We'll debate what we'll debate. Good things will happen, bad things will happen. But I'm just happy hockey's back.
Definitely. Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. And on the bright side, for sure, good to see that Fanatics didn't screw up the jerseys, right? So everything looks pretty good.
That's a whole different podcast for another day. I'll tell
Yeah.
you that.
But
Oh, boy.
the blue shirts certainly look as they should on home ice here in these preseason
Mhm.
games. Yeah, and there will be plenty of things to discuss as the season goes on. Year 2 of Peter Laviolette, should be interesting as well. And yeah, excited to do it with y'all. Thanks everybody for listening. Good to be back, and we'll catch you next week.